Hey, Habs fans, before we jump into the show, it is gift shopping season. Think about it. There's no better way to put a smile on your loved one's face than to share a special photo. Skylight Frame brings your favorite memories to life right in your home. So this holiday season, give the gift that keeps on giving, memories. Whether it's for grandparents who adore seeing the grandkids' latest antics, or maybe even a friend who loves capturing every single moment, the Skylight Frame is the perfect gift to bring joy and connection into any home. With no app or subscription required and just a quick 1-minute setup, Skylight is designed to be easy for all ages. You just simply plug in the frame and you're ready to start sharing memories. It's got a 10-inch color touchscreen which allows for easy interaction, letting you pinch and crop and zoom your photos directly on the frame. You can preload your favorite photos before you gift the Skylight Frame, and photos can be shared really easily via the free Skylight mobile app or email with no account or subscription required, which makes it really simple for everyone to contribute photos to the frame. Skylight Frame is a really great private way to share photos without having to post them to the world on social media or printing hard copies. Skylight Frame can hold up to 8,000 photos with 8 gigs of space. They're displayed in HD resolution. You can choose from 5 different frame styles, set it up in portrait or landscape mode. So for a limited time, get 20% off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to ca.skylightframe.com/hockey. That's right. To get 20% off your Skylight Frame, just go to ca.skylightframe.com/hockey. That's ca.skylightframe.com/hockey. Now let's get to the show. Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be your host for today's show, episode 323 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, titled Quarter Season Check-In. What is working for the Canadiens and what's not? It's going to be a good one to dive into and dig into today. So I'm happy to be joined in the studio to do all of that by my co-host, who is the founder and president of Rocket Sports. His name is Rick Stevens. How you doing today?
Doing great, thanks. I'm glad to have you here and glad to have our listeners here this weekend as we're heading into the American Thanksgiving week. And we've got Formula One in Vegas, George Russell of Mercedes on the pole, and Vegas happens to be in Montreal. So,
wow.
Yeah, everything tied up in a neat little bow.
Neat little bow. Very good. Yes, it is Thanksgiving week. It means I'm getting ready to eat a lot.
as you should. And you know, I'm proud Canadian and love our Thanksgiving, but I've always participated, let's put it that way, in American Thanksgiving. And whenever I could, I'd take the day off. And the schedule of football is fantastic, and it's just a fantastic day.
It's a very fun holiday and a very tasty one. So
enjoy.
Thank you. Plan on
and
it.
hi to our wishing happy Thanksgiving and early happy Thanksgiving to our American listeners, which lots of Canadiens fans all over.
That's right.
Continental U.S.
We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the 2 games that the Canadiens played this past week. And hey, they had some happy results. So we're going to have some fun games to talk about there. Get you caught up on all of that action, get you up to date on all of the roster news, injury updates, things of that nature. We're going to check in on Michael Hage and Jakub Fowler this week on the Prospect Report. Also see how the Laval Rocket and the Trois-Rivières Lions are doing. We have a very, very interesting quote of the week for you. You're not going to want to miss that one in the first segment. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some general news and notes, the big headlines around the NHL, before we get to the second segment, where we are going to take stock of the Montreal Canadiens at the quarter mark. We're just about 20 games in, so time to evaluate where they're at, where they're going, what's working, what's not. And it's kind of a good point for a measuring stick for all NHL teams at this point in the season. So we're going to take a close look at where the Canadiens are sitting right now and where they go from here. And then, of course, finally, in the third segment, we let you have your say. We always welcome feedback and interaction from our listeners and viewers, and we have some terrific responses this week to last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. I think you're all going to like the question that we have for you this week coming up at the end of segment 2. I will be very curious to see what kind of responses we get on that one. But we had some great responses to last week's question that we're going to bring you, and then we're going to get you all set up for this coming week. There's some interesting games coming up this week and so forth, and we want to get you all set to take in all of the Habs action. So it's going to be a fun show today. Don't forget, if you do want to interact with us and the show, we very much encourage you to do that. The easiest way for you to do it is to send us a text. You can do that anytime, 24/7 on the Rocket Sports text line, and that's just 585-3-ROCKET. Again, that's 585-3-ROCKET. Or you can send us a message on social media by following @Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, don't forget, while you're at it, be sure you are subscribed to the podcast. We don't ever want you to miss an episode. We are here all year round. So as I mentioned, Canadiens had 2 games this past week. Now, they haven't played since Monday. They played Saturday night and they played Monday night, and that was it. They've had a lengthy time off in between from game action, but both of those games were wins, and neither one of them, they were both pretty big wins, a 4-goal differential for their win against the Columbus Blue Jackets last Saturday night, and then a 3-0 shutout of the Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers on Monday night. Rick, that was a pretty tremendous couple of games.
Yeah, so the first 2-game winning streak this season.
Woo.
The game against Columbus last Saturday was pretty tight. It was just a 1-goal game.
Yeah.
Until midway through the third period, Canadiens leading 2-1, and it was Lucas Condada that scored the insurance goal, and then the floodgates open with Jake Evans following up, Josh Anderson after that. So this was. Nice to see Sean Monahan back. Nice to see Jordan Harris back. And it was kind of a back and forth, bit of a sloppy game. The stat that really jumped out at me was giveaways, and 18-7 for the Blue Jackets, which they were turning the puck all over the ice, and partly ineptness on behalf of the Blue Jackets, partly because the Canadiens were doing a good job pressuring them, particularly in the neutral zone, which they have been working on to defend before teams get into the Canadian zone. So a good win, and to put things right again, and it was a nice Saturday night win.
It was. Then Monday night, kind of a big test after that. It's a Monday night game at the Bell Center. Montreal hosting the Edmonton Oilers, and And, there was a lot of questions about, is Connor McDavid going to come in here and steamroll the Canadiens? Is the goaltender going to be up to snuff? Is the defense going to be up to snuff? Are they going to be able to shut down McDavid or Draisaitl? What's going to happen? Well, I don't know that anyone had Sam Montembeault's second shutout of the season on their bingo card that night, but that's what happened.
Yeah, this game didn't start out well. Edmonton, I think the shots were 13-8 in the first period. Montreal was not happy with the way they played in the first period, and then they came back and played probably the best 40-minute stretch of their season so far. The second and third period, Canadians were played exactly like they've wanted to play. It was Brendan Gallagher scoring very late, about 30 seconds left in the second period. And then Caden Gooley 5 minutes into the third period. Jake Evans added an empty netter and a really solid team game. As I said, Canadians played exactly how they wanted to play. On Saturday night, you can complain about the quality of the opponent, not so much on Monday. That was a really solid win. And so, as I said, now riding a 2-game winning streak.
That's amazing. That brings their record to 7-10-2. They got 4 points last week, bringing them to 16 points, which still leaves them at 30th in the NHL. But when we were here a week ago, they were 32nd. So they've moved up 2 spots, 30th overall in the NHL. What's that? Since it is the quarter season check-in, we'll check in on this stat. Currently gives them a 4.9% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, on pace for a 77-point season. That would be below most people's prognostications who were looking maybe being in the mix for a playoff spot. I think I had said around mid-80s in terms of points. But yeah, still behind the point, the pace, and that was a really tough start to the season. The 6-game losing streak, all of that. But hopefully they have turned the corner.
We can hope. Speaking of turning the corner, on Tuesday, the Canadiens announced that forward Raphael Harvey-Pinard finally ready to get back into game action, but want to ease him back in. So they announced that he had been assigned to the Laval Rocket on a long-term conditioning loan. He did play Wednesday night and Friday night with Laval. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the prospect report. But I think it's safe to say that he'll probably be there for a little bit, just to get the conditioning back and so forth. But very good to see that Raphael Harvey-Pinard finally recovering from some broken bones and is in Laval on a long-term conditioning stint.
Yeah, his injury, of course, came in the off-season, broke his leg in July, then needed surgery, and is working his way back. But the past couple of seasons have been marred by injury, and he hasn't played much hockey. And I think it's fair to say that it showed, especially on Wednesday night, the game I paid more attention to. He was cutting his shift short, and that's fine. His stamina seemed to be an issue, and it would be without game action in a long time. And it's going to take what's a long-term conditioning loan. Well, we don't know how long he's going to be there, but it's not just going to be a couple of games, and that's probably what's needed.
I think so too. Of course, the Canadiens held their morning skate on Saturday morning in preparation for their game against the Vegas Golden Knights on Saturday night. It'll be the goaltending matchup will be Sam Montembeault versus Adin Hill. And I think it's safe to say that not only would the Canadiens like to not just have their first 2-game win streak for the season, but a 3-game, but also I think they'd be happy to finally get a win against Vegas.
Yeah, it's been 4 years since they beat Vegas, and Vegas, a very good team now. As the media pointed out, to Brendan Gallagher in the interview in his press availability this week. Vegas will be playing their third road game in 4 nights. They may come into Montreal a bit tired. And the phrase that was used by the reporter was they'll be ripe to be exploited. And Brendan Gallagher pushed back on that pretty heavy, reminding the reporter just what a good team the Vegas Golden Knights is. So it'll be a tough test, but a good test for Montreal. Marty St. Louis said that he wants to see more speed. The Canadiens can be a speedy team. We haven't seen that so much as they've worked to clog up the neutral zone and kind of stifle, smother their opponents. He wants to see them starting to use their speed, especially in transition. Wants to see more intensity on the power play. The power play, which had started had a great start to the season and has fallen off. And interesting, he also said this week he wants to help his players to generate more scoring opportunities. And we talked about that last season, that this is a real seesaw in terms of the Canadiens creating lots of scoring opportunities at the beginning of the season, but giving up a lot. Now that they've clamped down on the defensive side, they aren't. They've been sacrificing their offensive abilities, and now Marty wants to turn his attention to that. We're talking about roster news, so I guess the other thing that we should mention here is for the last couple of games, Caden Gooley has moved back to the left side, his natural side, and I think in one of our shows in September, our preseason show, I said that it would be coaching malpractice for Caden Gooley not to play the majority of the season on his offside, on his wrong side, and that being the right, and he certainly has started the season there. Of course, he didn't have the benefit of training camp with the appendectomy. But and I said at the beginning of the season, even if you have to move Mike Matheson to the right, Mike Matheson skates well. Mike Matheson's a veteran. Mike Matheson should be able to adapt. And Caden Gooley is your future, and hopefully a number one pairing defenseman. So move him to his natural side. All of that came about this week, and coincidentally, the Canadiens got, coincidentally or not, they got 2 wins. Caden Gooley scored, which you mentioned earlier, and he looks more potent on the left side. So look for him to stay there for a little bit.
All right. Well, let's peek in at the Habs prospects and check in on the prospect report. It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. And it's the NCAA that we are going to focus on this week with 2 particular players. We haven't checked in on Michael Hage in a while, and the last time that we did, it was that he had a just shot out of a cannon to start the season. Despite the fact that Michigan was struggling at the beginning of the season, Michael Hage was performing very well. Well, he has certainly not faltered. Michigan visiting Penn State this weekend, and so in the first of that back-to-back series on Friday night, Michael Hage scoring twice in a 6-5, very close victory for Michigan over Penn State.
Hage scored the game winner in that game. It was his 3rd goal in the last 2 games, and which brings him to 7 goals, 4 assists. That's 11 points in 10 games, and that's, we remind you, his rookie season in the NCAA.
That's pretty impressive. You remember last week we talked about Jakub Fowler, who was channeling his inner Carey Price and absolutely pummeled a guy who had gone crashing into him.
I got to go back and watch that clip again.
I know.
10 or 20
times. It's a good one. It's very much a good one. Well, it did turn out, we mentioned that he had been ejected from the game because of that blocker punch that he threw at the opposing forward. He was then subsequently suspended for 1 game after that. So he missed Tuesday's game versus Providence. But he was back in the crease on Friday night, Rick. And maybe he likes getting suspended.
Versus Northeastern, his 4th shutout of the season. He's played 10 games. 4 of them are shutouts. He has 8-1-0 record. The one loss was the game that he got tossed out of against UConn. So his record is 8-1-0, 139 goals against, 949 save percentage, and 4 shutouts already in this first 10 games of his sophomore season.
Oh boy, that's pretty good. I like that kind of outlook for a goaltending prospect.
And let's be honest, he's playing on a very good team.
Yes, he is.
Very, very good team in Boston College. But that means that he goes for long periods of time without, a lot of action. And it was a scout. I was reading from one scout, NCAA scout, who says he doesn't lose focus when the puck spends long stretches at the other end of the rink and always rises to the big moment when needed. And then goes on to talk about his movement. He's so quick, and especially his lateral movement. He's having a dynamite season.
Speaking of dynamite, TSN released their annual ranking of under 24 players. It was prepared by Craig Button and Chris Peters from Flow Hockey, and I think Habs fans are going to be a little pleased with where those guys have the Montreal Canadiens sitting in terms of ranking NHL teams for U24 players. Number one
in TSN's annual ranking of under 24. They call it their Core 4 project. Where's Craig? Craig says, quote, and talking about the Canadiens and their prospects, it's an embarrassment of riches and a reason to be patient with the franchise rebuild. Now, Craig is very, if you followed him, very enthusiastic about the Montreal Canadiens, and he was saying similar things during the Bergevin. Very good, very close with Marc Bergevin. He likes the Montreal Canadiens organization, very tight there. And so take that with a bit of a grain of salt. What's helps me with these ratings is that Chris Peters, our good friend Chris Peters from Flow Hockey, is involved, prospect expert, draft expert, with Flow Hockey. The two of them put these rankings together. And they have Montreal at the top, as we said. They list the Canadiens Core 4 under 24 as on top, Cole Caulfield. And Cole Caulfield gets a AA rating, which puts him at elite. There is one rating higher than that, and that's AAA and kind of a generational player. My term, not theirs. On the Canadiens list, second, Core 4 under 24 is Ivan Demidov, get another AA rating. Number 3, Yuri Slafkovsky with an A, Lane Hudson with an A. And that just means the A rank means, a kind of top 4 pairing, top 6 forward. Mm-hmm. So in that order, and they like Cole Caulfield quite a bit. Cole Caulfield at the top of the list, Demidov, Slafkovsky, Lane Hudson. Below them, Fowler and Gooley both get A rankings. With B rankings, you have Hage, Joshua Waugh, Logan Mailloux, and David Reinbacher. Interesting, and not that he's given them any reason to do otherwise. But Kirby Dach, not on this list. If Kirby Dach is not one of the players that the Canadiens are building their future on, they've got a problem. The other thing, the other missing element here for me is there's no AAA player. And it's interesting that they place the Montreal Canadiens at number 1 and say the San Jose Sharks, which they have at 2, yet the Sharks have a AAA player in Macklin Celebrini, as well as a Will Smith and Askarov now and others. AAA also goes to a Jack Hughes for New Jersey. They're at number 4. A AAA ranking goes to a Connor Bedard for Chicago at number 6. So interesting the way and why that's important. A number of agents, media organizations do these rankings. We remember Corey Pronman in the summer did his similar criteria. He had the Canadiens coming out as 6th in the rankings, and that was mostly because they don't have that super elite, or I think as Corey says, the elite player. Now, could the Canadiens get one of those? Well, that's the whole that's coming up in the second segment. There's someone who thinks that they should go for that. The only other thing I noticed on this list is, again, take these rankings with a grain of salt. Buffalo Sabres were the number 1 team in the Craig Button rankings last year. I don't remember that Chris Peters was involved. And they're number 14 this season. And granted, there's going to be graduations and whatnot. But, that's a little bit curious to me.
Falling off the cliff, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, those are my observations of this list. No AAA player, no Dach on the list, no Newhook on the list either. So we'll see where it goes from here.
Well, let's. You mentioned that Logan Mailloux was one of those on the list, as well as Joshua Waugh. So let's take a look at how those two and the Laval Rocket have been doing in the last week. They've actually kind of had some hiccups in the past week, and that's not to say that they've been playing poorly, but they are not necessarily winning consistently anymore. They did win against Rochester last weekend, a good 4-1 victory. But then this week they've stumbled a little bit. They did get a point on Wednesday night when Rochester traveled to Laval, and the game went to overtime. But it was Rochester who ended up winning in overtime on Wednesday night. Belleville came to visit Place Bell on Friday night for Laval's Hockey Fights Cancer game. And Laval was up 2-0 earlier in this game, and Belleville then went on to put up 4 unanswered goals and beat them 4-2, which I think that might have caught Pascal Vincent a little, I don't want to say off guard, but he certainly had some comments after the game about, they got away from their game. They lost their focus, and Belleville took advantage of that. So
there was, I really liked both Owen Beck said that, as you said, got away from their game. But I liked Pascal Vincent's quote, and both of those are coming from Chris G., who was live on the scene for us at Place Bell. He said, in the second period, we got our first shot with 5 minutes left. 5 minutes left in the period, in the second period. And there were 15 minutes of, quote, what are we doing? So I thought that was described the game perfectly. Tough to come into Place Bell and on the Belleville side, especially being down 2 goals and then to just take over the game. And as both Beck and Pascal Vincent said, it was just the Laval Rocket got away from playing what has made them successful up to this point.
And we'll see if Laval can recover from that, or if Belleville's going to build on that, because it's a home-and-home series this weekend. Laval now travels to Belleville for Saturday night to play in Belleville at CAA Arena for the Senators Hockey Fights Cancer game. So we'll see what happens in the rematch on Saturday night.
And hopefully by then the entire Laval Rocket Ice crew has been fired, but that's a whole other...
You weren't aware that that intermissions were times to practice your figure skating?
I'm not. You've heard my rant, and
I have, and
I can't believe that I agree with our dear friend Todd Crocker, who's the play-by-play guy for the Marlies, and he complains about them all the time. But my goodness, worst in the now I won't say American Hockey League because we don't see a lot of games on the West.
On the West.
In the Eastern Conference, for sure, the AHL. And sometime I may get into my reasons why, but...
just hot tip, just go out and do your job. It's not time to twirl around and have fun.
And, yeah.
That leaves the Rocket currently sitting first in the North Division, still first in the North Division. Now, Toronto is... Because of those 2 losses, Toronto has crept up on them a little bit. Toronto is just 3 points behind them in the standings. But they are still third overall in the AHL with 25 points. I will make a note, because this always comes into play heavily at the end of the season. Laval has played 16 games so far this season. Most of the rest of the North Division has 2 or 3 games in hand on them. Laval's played some of the highest amount of games in the division so far. So there will be some time that things could get a little tighter, but for right now, they're still sitting pretty on top of the North Division. Trois-Rivières also had a couple of games this week against Worcester, dropping their first game of the week just by 1 single goal. It was a little bit of a barn burner, 5-4 that Worcester won that one, but Trois-Rivières turned things around the very next day to beat them 3-1. And so they've actually crept up a couple of places in the ECHL, now sitting in 13th overall. And so making some improvements here and there, little by little. And
while we're stopping with the ECHL, just a bit of news about a week or so ago. Goaltender Joe Verbetic. I think some fans may have forgotten about goaltender Joe Verbetic. 7th round pick in 2021. A giant of a goaltender, 6'6", and we remember he played in the OHL, came from the North Bay Battalion. In fact, it was when he was with North Bay, we had his mom on the podcast. Great interview. He played a few games with Laval, played with Trois-Rivières, won 10 games for Trois-Rivières last season, and signed a contract with about 10 days ago with the Indy Fuel of the ECHL. So good luck to Joe. He's still the property of the Montreal Canadiens, and so we wish him a good season.
Absolutely. So speaking of Laval goaltenders... let's talk about Jakub Dobes for a second. Jakub Dobes still having a very good start to his season on the heels of a very strong NHL training camp this year. He's had a couple of bobbles this week. He managed to get himself a delay of game penalty. Was that on Wednesday night? It might have been on Wednesday night for forgetting himself for a moment, and he went to the corner to play the puck outside the trapezoid.
The no-go zone.
In the no-go zone.
Worst rule in AHL, NHL, the trapezoid.
Yeah.
Get rid of the trapezoid.
So he took a penalty for that.
Didn't deserve it.
Well, I know.
Well, he did, according to the rules,
According to the
but
rules,
it shouldn't be a rule.
Yeah, I know. But he had some pretty strong words post-game after there was a lengthy, it was almost a 13-minute video review on what what they thought was a Sean Farrell goal, which I know we talked about this recently. That was one of the things at the GM's meeting in Toronto a couple of weeks ago that they were going to talk about NHL length of time for video review. Well, this went on. It was almost a full intermission at this point. I thought that by the time they finally got done with it, they should have allowed the players a brief warm up because they had been standing for so long. But one of the big issues all came down to a piece of technology that wasn't working properly. And Dobes did not mince words after the game about how he felt about it.
I just don't understand. I just don't understand some people in this league that are just part of this league. I mean, the first goal, I don't know. I can't even understand how is that not a goal. I'm blown. Like, he's right behind the net and he's relying on the iPad and blaming the iPad. This is a problem I feel like with society. Like, we are relying on the technology. He's right there. And in OT, he doesn't give us a penalty. I will be fine with our performance. We'll fix it, but I wouldn't sleep well with that guy if he's getting another game against us.
Did your explanations from the referee?
I was trying to talk to him. He doesn't care.
Okay.
He just, I don't know. He's going. I don't know. That's the only thing that really bothers me, that we are relying on an iPad. Like, he's right behind the net. That's the only thing that I just wish he will man up and give a good goal, because it's a good goal. And they maybe cost us, so we cannot blame him, but...
Brilliant.
Just man up.
Just
and admit that it
man
was... Man up and admit it was a goal. You were right there.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And the crazy thing was the crew that completely blew the call on Wednesday. It was the same crew on Friday night.
And he wasn't in that.
No, he wasn't there. It was kind of, he was, fortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was obvious. It you didn't, as he says, you didn't need video review. The issue was the puck squirted free to Sean Farrell, who obviously slammed it in the back of the net.
Right.
The referee was right behind, obvious to everybody in the arena. It was a goal, but there was some question about when the whistle sounded, I guess.
Yeah.
And for that, they had to go check the iPad, and the iPad wasn't working, and they went back and forth with the situation room and whatnot. And like you mentioned the NHL meetings, there was, why not turn more of it over to, they've got a million camera, not so much in the AHL, but in the NHL, I'm speaking, a million cameras. They got different views, all kinds of information that the on-ice officials don't have. And in this case, the referee wasn't trusting his own eyes. It was like he needed some sort of corroboration that, about the whistle and all that. Yeah. And Sean Farrell had a goal. It was obvious. What's interesting there was that Dobes jumped so quickly from this was a problem in the game on that night to this is a problem in society, which I thought was fantastic. Yeah. He is a character. He is ultra competitive, and he was steamed. I mean, he was more upset than Sean Farrell, I think.
I think so.
And this reminded me so much of a couple years ago when we were in Hershey watching from the press box, and Laval had scored a shorthanded goal, and it was obvious.
Very obvious.
And somebody had kicked the plug out of the replay machine.
Yeah.
And the referee went over because he missed it. He was chugging his way down the ice. It was a shorthanded breakaway, and he didn't get down there to see it. Everybody in the building in Hershey knew that it was a goal, and we were in the press box, and I was getting messages, Twitter DMs from fans who had taken video on their phone of the goal. It was obvious, but and there was a Montreal Canadiens official in the press box that just was very, very upset.
Looking over our shoulder to watch the video clips you were getting and was just apoplectic.
But this is, anyway, this is partly about replay. This is partly about using common sense and your eyes on the ice. And this is partly about the really competitive goaltender that the Canadiens have in their system, who is just lives and dies on every play, and is off to a great season. 6-1-1 record, .918 save percentage, .232 goals against, on the heels of a great season last year.
Watch out, Caden Primo.
We thought you should know a little bit more about Jakub Dobes.
That's right. Can you imagine if it gets to a point where you've got the characters of Dobes and Fowler as a tandem? The attitude that's going to be in that crease would be amazing.
That'd be lots of fun.
All right. Let's touch on some news from around the league. Boston Bruins no longer have a coach in Jim Montgomery, fired after their 8-9-3 start. Associate coach Joe Sacco is going to assume the interim head coaching duties for now. It's one. I mean, you understand why they had to do it, but boy, poor Jim Montgomery.
Yeah, and Jim Montgomery, if you don't know, he's a Montreal native. He speaks French, if that matters to you. And his we mentioned Marty St. Louis' coaching points percentage after 210 games or whatever it is 430 thereabouts. Jim Montgomery's is like 720, 730. I don't know what it is. And he was the Jack Adams winner in 2023. Is it all his fault? I mean, there was some really bad off-season signings, which, the Bruins, who cares? We'll revel in that. Right. They've had some bad goaltending, bad special teams this season. Is he to blame? Well, he was the scapegoat, and the scuttlebutt out there is that the Blues could be interested, the Canadiens could be interested, the Red Wings and Penguins. The Canadiens, in terms of he's being connected because he's a Montreal native and he could provide that some experience. A long college coaching career in Denver and then with the Bruins. So anyway, that's where we're at.
That's where we're at with that. But that means who's next? Because it's getting to be that part of the season. Coaches that are not performing, or I should say teams that are not performing, as you say, the coach tends to have to be the scapegoat most of the times in those kinds of situations. And so there's probably some head coaches that are getting a little hot under the collar.
Sean Gentile this week had an article out in The Athletic saying, with Jim Montgomery out, who's next? His list includes Derek Lalonde in Detroit, understandably so. Luke Richardson, I wouldn't have him on the list in Chicago. I think he's all right.
Yeah.
Mike Sullivan, we've talked about Mike Sullivan and not really connecting with Kyle Dubas. I almost said Dobes. It's Dubas.
Dobes.
Andrew Burnett in Nashville off to a terrible start. Drew Bannister in St. Louis. And Montgomery has a connection there. And Sean Gentile, interesting, has Marty St. Louis on his list. We've talked about it before. I don't think it's happening, but it's. I understand why some of the pundits might put, because of the start that the Canadiens have had, and because of his coaching percentage, points percentage, might have him on the list.
Absolutely. We will see who's going to be next. It's also, we talked about it last week about the trade market already starting to open up a little bit early on, and whether or not the Habs will get in on that. And Chris Johnston had a trade board out this week, right?
He does. You have Ivan Provorov from Columbus. Canadiens will see this week, or will will he be gone by then? No, I think he'll be there. Ivan Provorov from Columbus, Marcus Pettersson from the Penguins, Cam Fowler in Anaheim, Taylor Hall. Lots of rumors about Taylor Hall in Chicago. Frank Vatrano's on this list. Trevor Zegras, David Juracek, who we talked about again, Columbus. And you go all the way down to number 19 to find a Montreal Canadien. Might not be who you think. No, it's not David Savard. It's Mike Matheson on Chris Johnston's trade board list. Number 19 most likely to be traded, a Montreal Canadien, that being Mike Matheson. Yeah.
It's a possibility. All right, let's take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. We've got a new incentive from our friends at DraftKings for you to check out in this commercial break, as well as winding down with, yes, it's American Thanksgiving next week, but Black Friday and Cyber Saturday are also next week as well. Our friends over at Raycon have a really good incentive going on right now. So you want to check that out with a special code just for us, just for our viewers and listeners. When we come back, we are going to dig into our big topic segment, 20 games in, taking stock of the 2024-25 Montreal Canadiens, with a pretty fun question of the week for all of you to answer as well. So you're not going to want to miss that. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
You know, the 24-25 NHL season still has that new car smell. And the action is really heating up at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started at DraftKings Sportsbook. Try betting on something simple, just like picking a team to win. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. Oh boy, it is November, and you know what that means? Black Friday and Cyber Monday are just a few short weeks away, and it's such an exciting time of year. With Raycon, you get an amazing deal on premium audio products every day of the year. But hey, that doesn't mean they're not having any sales for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. No, far from it. Guess what? They're actually doubling down on their amazing value by offering our viewers up to 30% off site-wide. My favorite product of theirs, Raycon's Everyday Earbuds. I use these earbuds every single day. Plenty of new features that make them kind of more of a must-have for audio lovers. There's now a 32-hour battery life on them and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. Having good noise cancellation can be difficult to find with a pair of earbuds at a really accessible price point, but not with Raycon's Everyday Earbuds. Raycons start at just half the price as the other guys, which was what was really surprising for me the first time I tried the Everyday Earbuds, because I'm a voice actor by trade. So I have some pretty high quality headphones, both over-the-ear and in-ear earbuds, from some pretty big names. And I was really surprised at how good the quality of the Raycons are, particularly given their price point.
So they're already an incredible deal before you even factor in their Black Friday or Cyber Monday offer of up to 30% off site-wide. Those kinds of deals at those kinds of prices means you could pick up a pair or two of Raycon's everyday earbuds as an amazing gift for somebody for the holidays, and also pick up a pair for yourself as well. I mean, why not? Now is the perfect time to scoop them up if you haven't done so already. And don't worry, if you're not as impressed with them as I am, don't worry about it. Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. It is time to save big for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right, you'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/THPN. And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. My name is Amy Johnson. If you'd like to follow my coverage and thoughts and whatnot on Twitter or X, you can find me at Flyers Rule. Also, you can do that with our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens, who is here with me in the studio. You can follow him on X or Twitter at Rocket Sports. You can also just follow this podcast at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Catch up on any episodes you might have missed on our website at canadiensconnection.fm. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the Canadiens Connection podcast, both if you're listening in a podcast player, then subscribe to it that way. But also, regardless of that's where you listen to the podcast or not, be sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com and you can hit subscribe.
Subscribing is one way you can support us and do your little part to help us, as well as to keep current on the content that we put out there. As far as doing your little part, I just want to point out and say thank you to our sponsors. We have a partnership with the Hockey Podcast Network, and for 5 years or so, we're very grateful to them and the sponsors that we have. And very good sponsors: DraftKings, Raycon, Skylight, Game Time. Game Time will hear an opportunity for our listeners a little bit later. Listen, there's no paywall for you to go through or anything. We have this content is made available to you, and it's that old time, talent, treasure kind of exchange that we give our time. We have our talent and connect with talent, and you have, Amy, you're more talented than I have. You're an Emmy-nominated reporter and video producer. Chris G on the Laval beat, on site at Place Bell, our senior writer. And so if you can do a little bit, just do a little bit for listening by supporting our great sponsors. If you can do that, we'd really appreciate it.
Yes, we would. And we thank you for doing so. Mm-hmm. All right. So the NHL season this week, it's passing its 1 quarter mark. We're going to hit 20 games for the Canadiens. That's going to happen on Saturday night. And Marty St. Louis, the Canadiens head coach, has said repeatedly, can't really evaluate his team until 20 games into the season. Well, ding, ding, ding. Time has arrived, Marty. So that begs the question, since we are at that point that he consistently kind of lays out as a marker, it begs the question, who is the 2024-25 edition of the Montreal Canadiens? What have they done right? What are they doing wrong? Where are they going? We've already kind of been on a huge roller coaster just in 20 games. There's been some pretty fun highs. If you think about opening night and that big win against the Toronto Maple Leafs, there's been some pretty deep valleys. That 6-game losing skid was just awful to get through.
And there's been a lot kind of in between as well. And who knows what the next 20 games are going to look like. Interestingly, Elliot Friedman, this past week on the 32 Thoughts podcast, had a kind of a heart-to-heart with Habs fans. And he started off with just a wee bit of advice for the Canadiens and their fans.
If you're a Canadiens fan, you may not like what I'm about to say, but I think now you have to hurt for Hagens.
What?
Yeah.
Begging for Hagens this early?
Yeah.
So this is from the 32 Thoughts podcast. Not the most recent edition. Came out 10 days ago or so.
Right.
And it was after the Canadiens were on that 6-game losing streak. They were last in the NHL at that point. And if you're evaluating the 20 games, we want to put everything in context. So at that point, Marty St. Louis was talking about the Canadiens and having a very fragile team. The fans had kind of lost patience. They were upset with the promises of the preseason and the in the mix stuff. We were talking about how fans were talking about the regression, that they were behind the pace of last season. And it was a dark time. So, but it went on for a bit, and it was Elliot Friedman who said, and as far as I understand, he still believes that the Canadiens would be best served by going for that first overall pick, and whereas the year that they had the first overall pick, there wasn't a generational talent available. This year, there very well could be. And James Hagens from Boston College, and his Hurt for Hagens tagline, trying to say that the Canadiens need, and even Craig Button had said, no AAA talent here, and the insinuation is they still might need one. The Canadiens might be able to pick one up this year if they were managed to get the first overall pick. And yes, that's a tagline. But he explains. He goes on and explains why this would be the best possible outcome for the team. Now this is a longer clip than we typically play, and believe me, this was edited even because he goes on a really long explanation. But this is a 3-minute clip that gives you background and why Elliot Friedman believes this would be the best course of action for the Montreal Canadiens.
But I think that the Canadiens are, Kyle, they are not one big trade away. Maybe you can, put a Band-Aid on something. You can get a veteran who can play your blue line. You can get a forward with edge. You can play up front. But you are not one big trade away from contending for a playoff berth. And this is where I think that as an organization, you have to say, we're going to eat it this year. Look, if something incredible drops on your lap that you say you have to take it, then you do it. But I'm not I don't see anything like that right now. I think right now I would have a big conversation about, are we really sure that the way we're playing or the way we're doing things is helping the players enough? I do think that part of the reason the Canadiens are where they are, and I believe this even more after watching the game the other night, is that when they're good, they want to play this system. Like there's a lot of talk about the system, and Andrew Brewer, whose work I really love on our website. I think that's a huge ad by us. He's talking about how they can change the system. Well, the one thing I kind of think now after talking to some people on Saturday is this is the system they want to play when they're good. So the players have to learn how to play it. But I wonder, is there more teaching they can be doing? Is there somebody else who can help them teach it a bit? Like even a consultant? I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there because you can sit there and you can say, this is the way we've got to teach it, and they've just got to figure it out. Or you can sit there and say, it's not reaching them, and we have to find other ways to help teach it to them. That's for the Canadiens to decide. But overall, big picture, if you think you're making a trade right now, and again, something could drop on their laps and totally surprise me, but it is extremely unlikely you're making a trade right now that is going to get you to a playoff berth. Maybe you get a trade that takes you from where you are now to 27th, 26th, but is that really worth it? And I know there's going to be some Canadiens fans who are going to sit there and say to me, you're not the one paying for tickets. You're not the one who has to watch this. And I'm with you on this, but I am paid to have a sober second thought on what I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is the reality is, what is the point for the Canadiens this year to finish 25th or 26th? There is a stud at the top of this draft, and you may just have to go for it.
So a pretty sober reality check. I didn't give it an opportunity to respond to his first Hurtin' for Hagen's clip, and then I'll give you a chance to talk too about your reactions to the much longer explanation that he provided there. As I said, kind of a reality check for Canadiens fans.
One of the things before I react to what Friedman has to say here, one of the things I really appreciate about Elliot, and he actually spelled it out there for you, is he says, fans, I understand you're the ones that are paying for the tickets. You're the ones that have to endure night after night after night of watching this team struggle. And he sympathizes with that and understands that. But as he said, but I am paid for an objective, sober perspective of the team as a whole from the business of hockey perspective. I appreciate him spelling that out because we say that quite often here on the show as well. And it was he said it in a very, very concise and very easy to understand way. And that's essentially kind of the same thing that we do here, that yes, we understand the pain that comes with being a fan enduring all of this. And that sometimes the things that we say might not be very popular, but they are the objective, honest perspectives that we have coming at it from that perspective. So I just wanted to make that point. And I have to say, I agree with him here. What is the point of making some big trade if you're only going to climb up a few points in the standings? Now, granted, he did say this before they went and won 2 games in a row. But we don't know if those 2 games in a row are a complete flash in the pan or if they're the start of something. So we can only go off of the body of work that we have already seen them do this season. And yeah, if they're only, as he said, what's the use of gaining a few spots in the standings at this stage and he's not suggesting a tank. Elliot Friedman is not ever one to suggest tank on purpose, but he is saying maybe there doesn't need to be an effort to go out of the way to make some big trade or to try to salvage something, for the end of the season when
maybe what the salvage is just get through the season, learn what you can, and reap the reward at the draft next year.
I just find it really fascinating that the Canadiens have played 19 games. Marty said, check in and I'll tell you my evaluation when 20 games have passed. And the 19 game with 20 on the horizon, Canadiens will play Vegas Saturday night, is a real pivot point. Because, if it's a 2-game winning streak and one of those games is against Columbus, then there's focus, and no matter what the winning streak is, it shouldn't completely erase the problems. It won't completely erase the problems that have existed already. But if the Canadiens were to beat Vegas, and Vegas will come into the Bell Center tired, playing 3 road games in 4 nights and all of that. If the Canadiens can have a 3-game winning streak, you got Columbus coming up, you got Utah coming up, maybe there's an opportunity to go on a bit of a roll. Then I think, all's kind of forgiven, and there isn't as much pressure for the demanding that the system be changed, demanding that they go out and find an experienced NHL coach to help better teach the method that they're trying to use, the system that they're trying to use, and there's less pressure on Kent Hughes, to find that right-handed experienced defenseman or forward with an edge. But then that also suggests if they do go on a bit of a roll, that they get into that territory of being in the mushy middle, and can they get another A ranked player, a AA ranked player? Yeah, they probably can with all of the draft assets they have, get at least that. But what they really need is, as Elliot said, that stud that'll be at the top of the draft, that elite player that combined with their core 4, combined with the players who are yet to arrive, might turn them into that contender that Canadiens fans have been yearning for. So at the 20-game mark, it's as I said, it's on a nice edge to see what happens on Saturday night. And it's fascinating to then look and see, have they progressed from last year or the year before?
Well, it's hard because you remember how difficult last season was, right? And there's been, when we said during that 6-game losing streak that they were on, that not even that had happened last year, as difficult as last year was. And so that was a real low point very early in the season. That was a hard pill to swallow. Thankfully, they've come out of that. They snapped that streak. Now they're starting to put a couple of wins together here and there. But it's when you have that overall feeling of, it just doesn't get better, it's hard to really kind of remember, okay, well, have they gotten better in areas? Have they gotten worse in areas? Are they kind of static in other areas? And so it really requires you to kind of drill down and, do that thing that none of us liked to do when we were in school. And that's like your homework, and do some research and sift through the stats. And well, my goodness, it's just so fortunate for me that my co-host majored in mathematics and just loves numbers. And so I don't have to do any of that, and you can. And so Rick Stevens is here. He's done the homework. He's done the stats. He's compared everything, and he's got the results for us.
So something, just a simple comparison. We're not going to go back and years and years. We'll just compare last year to where the Canadiens were after 19 games to this year after 19 games. And sometimes advanced stats are difficult to convey. in this format. So let's just do something relatively straightforward that'll give you a flavor of where the Canadiens are this year. Now, in all cases, this is after 19 games. We look at the Montreal Canadiens as a team, 16 points, their record 7-10-2 right now, 16 points, which is in the ballpark, but a little bit behind last season's pace. 18 points after 19 games, 16 points this season, 18 points last season. Last season, points percentage of .474, less this season at .421. Goals for, last season 55, this season 54. Offense is the same. They need more offense. Goals against, there's been a focus on reducing goals against, but they've given up more goals this season, 70 versus 67, still in the ballpark. Power play, because of that great start at the beginning, power plays ticked up a couple of points. 21.5% success rate this season, 19.2 last season. It's the penalty kill that has been the big mover, the big improvement. 81.8 this season, 73.4 this season. Shots per game, they're down quite a bit. 5 shots per game fewer this season, and that's because they're, to avoid all the leakage at the beginning, that they've really clamped down. They're pulling the forwards back. They're asking the forwards to exit the offensive zone earlier. They're playing more cautious. They're very tentative, and the forwards are coming back to help out the defense, and all of them to help out the goaltending, which has not been great. So I think that and shots against per game in that way have come down a little bit. Face-offs, they're not winning as many face-offs, and that was partially due. Sean Monahan was good in that regard last season. So when fans say, they've noticed a bit of regression, well, they certainly haven't. There hasn't been any progression, or very little, other than the penalty kill from last season to this season.
All right.
As far as individuals, let's look at the skaters. Who leads the scoring? Well, it's Nick Suzuki. I mean, it's going to be Nick Suzuki. You knew it was going to be Nick Suzuki. 17 points last year, 19 points this year. 7 goals, 12 assists this year, 6 and 11. It's the same. Cole Caulfield. Lots of talk about Cole Caulfield and how much better he's been this season. Well, points-wise, he has 1 more point than he did last season. Of course, it's the goals that have jumped up from 5 last year to 12 this year. Mike Matheson had 5 goals at this point last year, just 1 this year. Yuri Slafkovsky, Yuri was struggling at this point last season. That was before he got moved to the top line. He's gone from 5 assists last year, 3 assists last year at this point to 10 this year. Brendan Gallagher, he 9 points last year, 10 points this year. Of course, he has 8 goals, second on the team in terms of goal scoring. Jake Evans has taken a big jump from 5 points last year to 10 points. He's been a real nice surprise and hasn't looked out of place on the second line. Caden Gooley has about the same, 7 points last year, 6 points this season. Who's been a nice story is Emil Heineman, 5 points, 3 goals this season already. And Alex Newhook, I think, a big disappointment. 12 points last season, just 4 this season. So that's the skaters. The goaltenders, well, Sam Montembeault's got the opportunity to start a whole lot more games. Jake Allen not in the mix, obviously. He started 14 games this season, just 8 games last season. He had 4 wins last season, just 2 more. Despite having 6 more starts, he just has 2 more wins. Caden Primo, he's had 2 extra starts over last year, 5 starts this year, 3 last year, and just 1 win in both years. Montembeault, the same save percentage, goals against, and Caden Primo's gotten, it was bad last year, it's gotten worse this year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, numbers don't lie. There it is in black and white. So there are some areas that have improved or players who have improved, but there are also a lot of places where they've taken it a step back. And I think that's one of the things that they need to take a good hard look at. We all know that just like player development, this is a favorite phrase of my co-host, is not a linear process. Rebuilds aren't linear necessarily either. And so there's going to be a little bit of back and forth. Hopefully the backwards doesn't last too long. But you mentioned Caden Gooley. Let's talk a little bit about a few players who have been pleasant surprises so far this season. And you did mention Caden Gooley. And actually in the first segment, you talked a bit about, in the roster news segment, you talked about how whether it's coincidence or not, the Canadiens won a couple of games this week when Caden Gooley was finally playing on the left side, on his natural side. Well, he was asked about whether or not he likes playing on his natural side.
That's good. I mean, I don't really care. I'll play left or right, and it doesn't matter to me, whatever gets me on the ice. But no, it's good. Obviously, it's the natural side. It's what you play growing up. So a little bit just less thinking, just kind of you're in the right spots for the most of the time and just kind of go play.
So he gives the politically correct answer at the start and then says, yeah, of course. It's what the natural side's what I've played, and I don't have to really think about it. I can just play. And he has, and he's looked very good. The pair of them have looked good, Matheson and Gooley, with Matheson on the right. You get a little bit more offense out of Gooley, I think, when he's on his natural side. And he's just looked a lot more comfortable. What I was a little disappointed in was he was asked how he found out, and rather than sitting down with him and communication's supposed to be very open and give him the reason,
strategy,
and why, and at this point, he's been on the right side, his wrong side, his offside exclusively since early in January. So that's a lot of games. He found out just his name was on the board on the left side when he arrived at the rink, which I thought was a little odd, but
okay.
Yeah, he said, oh well, I no time to think about it. Just again, a politically correct answer.
Yeah.
Just get me in the lineup and I'm fine.
That's right. Lucas Candata has obviously been a pleasant surprise for Habs fans. Don't forget, Lucas Candata, no stranger to Laval Rocket fans, and he was named the new captain of the Laval Rocket this year, and has since then found himself up back and forth to Montreal. But he, is a very good energy guy. He's got a great positive attitude. It's big reason why he was chosen for the leadership team in Laval. Bit of a playmaker as well. And he happens to also have experience playing with another one of the guys that Rick just mentioned, has had a positive season so far, Emil Heineman, from when they played in Laval together last year. And here was Candata talking about playing with Emil Heineman.
He's obviously a really good player, really physical too, and has a great shot. I played with him a little bit in Laval years prior, and obviously an awesome player, an awesome guy to play with, and it's easy to talk to him on the bench. So.
this was a way of getting both. We're talking about pleasant surprises so far in the first 19 games. I think Emil Heineman has been a pleasant surprise, as has Lucas Kandata. It was caused by this movement was caused by moving the assumption. I think everybody would assume that Kirby Dach would be playing center. And maybe Alex Newhook, but it's been Jake Evans that had to be promoted. Then you had, Christian Dvorak moved onto that third line with Gallagher and Josh Anderson, and that left a gap on the fourth line, needing a center. They called Lucas Kandata, and he has been a very pleasant surprise, playing with Heineman, playing with a player that he knows and is used to playing with. He compared himself a little bit to Jake Evans. He said he talks to Jake a lot. He also said he talks to Darcy Tucker, and if you know what kind of player Darcy Tucker was in his day with both the Canadiens and the Leafs, you get a sense of Lucas Kandata doesn't have that mean streak Darcy Tucker does, but he plays with an edge. He can bring some physicality, skates well, good energy, good shot. He's pretty good on faceoffs as well. And that fourth line is doing so well that there's Michael Pezzetta can't get into the lineup.
No.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens. Patrick Laine, he's been practicing with the team in a non-contact jersey, and so we'll see him in the next few weeks probably. After his conditioning stint, Raphael Harvey-Pinard will come back. The Canadiens have one roster spot right now, but what will they do? Will they send Lucas Kandata back to Laval? And I think, we'll see how many games that he will have played by then. Will he be waiver eligible, and will the Canadiens risk that? And why would you send him back? He's been good. Why would you send Emil Heineman? No, he's been good. You almost have to send Michael Pezzetta and expose him to waivers. But I think that fourth line has been a real nice surprise in these first 19 games. Emil Heineman and Lucas Kandata.
Another nice surprise this season so far, and you spoke about him a moment ago as well, has got to be Brendan Gallagher. And, very honest here, there have been multiple times on this show over the last 2 seasons that we, whatever, have been very vocal about Brendan Gallagher and his gigantic contract and him not living up to it. And, wanting to see him potentially traded even at some point, even despite that big contract. Well, Brendan Gallagher has turned a corner this season. The goals are coming. He looks more like the Brendan Gallagher we knew a few years ago and could kind of rely on. He still does the Brendan Gallagher things. He goes to the net. He goes to the dirty areas. He's a big pest. But the difference is that he's actually scoring now. And I think it's taken some weight off of his shoulders. And he was asked about, what he feels the difference is.
I mean, like to give you an answer. To be honest, I think pucks are just finding a way to go in right now, and there'll be times where they're not. And for me, that's why I kind of look at my game in other regards other than goals and points. There's just other things that I measure and like to do on the ice. Right now I feel like I'm doing it. I'm being rewarded, but there's been times where they haven't been the case, but I still feel like I'm playing okay hockey. You just have to understand ways to contribute every night, and that's all I'm trying to do. Be consistent for my coaches, for my teammates, and be relied upon, and hopefully be there every night, and every once in a while they go in.
Yeah, it's modest, obviously. Yeah. 8 goals. And I think for me, they're coming in different ways. It isn't, him going, they aren't all going to the net and jamming a puck in. Or so he's getting goals in different ways. That line, first it was Jake Evans and Anderson and Gallagher that was really good. And Dvorak's been pretty good there as well. And that line has a lot to do with the fact that Brendan Gallagher is just, as he said, he has a focus on making a positive difference, whether he's scoring or not, whether he's going to the net or not, whether he's being passed after the whistle or not. He's looking for ways to contribute very positively in different ways. Because as he said, the goals are going in now, may not be going in at some point in the season, and he wants to be consistent. He's being consistent. He's got a pretty high shooting percentage right now. That's not always going to continue, but he's out there for over 14 minutes a game and contributing in a multiple different ways, and certainly the leadership factor as well. And that third line has been very good for the Montreal Canadiens, and we're talking about pleasant surprises here in the first 19. He certainly has been one.
He actually has, and I say good for Brendan Gallagher. It shows that he still has that professional athlete mentality. He's persistent. He's not had great seasons in the past couple of seasons, but that hasn't stopped him, and he's still trying to kind of soldier on. And it's good to see him kind of on the upswing of things at this time. So that's going to bring us to the Canadiens Connection question of the week. And I said a couple of times that I think this is a really interesting one in terms of I can't wait to see what kind of responses we get from our listeners and viewers. We're going to ask you for a prediction this week. And our prediction, we've just talked about where the Canadiens are at after their first 20 games of the season, at their quarter point of the season. So what is your prediction for where the Canadiens are going to stand 20 games from now, at the 40-game mark of the season, which is roughly the halfway point? What is your prediction for where the Canadiens will stand 20 games from now? Can't wait to hear. I think there's a lot of different outlooks and perspectives that could come into play here.
And take it any way you wish.
Yeah.
Whether you want to focus on the trades that have been made, where the Canadiens will be in the standings, changes, take it any way you wish, and give us your best prediction, your bold prediction for the next 20 games.
The best way, of course, to do that is to send us a text at the Rocket Sports text line. That is 585-3-ROCKET. Again, that's 585-3-ROCKET. You can also send your answer to us on social media at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We want to hear from you. If you're watching on YouTube, just drop your response to the question in the comments section. That's a very popular place for people to reply to the Canadiens Connection question of the week. And of course, as always, next week on the show, we'll pick out the best responses and read them on next week's show. I think that our fans and listeners and viewers are going to have some really great things to say here. All right. So we are going to take our final break on the Canadiens Connection podcast. Rick promised you at the top of this segment that you were going to hear from our sponsors at Game Time later in the show. Well, that's coming up right now. They've got a great incentive for you just for our Canadiens Connection podcast fans and listeners. A percentage off, some money off if you're buying concert or sporting event tickets. So you're going to want to check that out as we bring that offer to you next. And then in our third segment, we're going to hear from you. We've got some great responses to last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, so you don't want to miss that. Stay with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. Getting back to watching Habs games on TV most nights of the week is pretty fun. It's even better when you can experience the Canadiens live, whether they're at home at the Bell Center or on the road. Game Time will have you covered this season to get you the best opportunities for great deals on seats to see your favorite NHL team live. Game Time sets itself apart from other third-party ticket sellers in a lot of ways. You're going to filter out all the fluff with the Game Time app, and you're just going to get incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste a lot of time sifting through thousands of ticket offers on other apps. So let's just take a look here. And I'm just taking a look at their interactive ticket map, and I'm seeing that ticket prices on Game Time are starting at $62. I'm even seeing, though, if you want to get down in the reds, there are tickets under $200 down in the reds, and I'm talking like in the lower third of the reds. There are some great deals. What else do I love about the app? Seat views before you buy. If there is one thing that I am obsessive about when I'm buying tickets for a hockey game or even for concerts and shows and things like that, which Game Time also has tickets available for, I want to know, particularly if it's at a venue that I'm not necessarily familiar with, like say I'm checking out a Habs game on the road, I want to know exactly what my view from my seat is going to look like. And Game Time, its app, has a really cool feature that you get a panoramic example of what your seat that you're looking at purchasing will look like before you get to buy it. Lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection. They even have a feature that you can toggle on their app called all-in pricing, which shows the complete total to buy the tickets up front, including any taxes and fees and things like that, so that you don't get any surprises at checkout when you think, oh, well, let me just buy these tickets for $100, and then you go to checkout and it ends up costing you $180 or something like that. You know, you're going to get all-in pricing right up front. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Love that. And ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, whether it's for the NHL or for a concert or a show. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time picks. And we've got a great incentive for our listeners. Thanks to the folks over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. It's free. It's simple. All you have to do is punch in your email address. I just did it today. And use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And welcome back to episode 323 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget, tap subscribe if you haven't done so already. We never want you to miss an episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast. We are here all year round, not just during hockey season. And of course, don't forget, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. Send us a text at the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. And don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We have lots of great things for you on the YouTube channel. Of course, some of you already know because you're watching right now on YouTube that we do post this podcast on our YouTube channel a couple of days after it comes out on Spotify and all the podcast platforms and that type of thing. I also do some regular Laval Rocket oriented content on our YouTube channel, going a little deeper into how the Laval Rocket and the Habs prospects are performing. That show is called the Rocket Hockey Report, and it comes out a couple times a month. So you'll want to be sure to subscribe. Go to InsideTheCanadiens.com. Just tap subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you always you're always notified when we put a new video out. And be sure, as I've said, that you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. You know, Rick talked in the last segment about just the little things that you can do to show your appreciation or just to help us out. If you're a regular listener of the show, we would really appreciate if you can leave us a review. If you're listening on a podcast platform that allows you to do that, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment. helping out just a little bit more that doesn't cost you a thing is just tapping that share button and sharing this episode on your favorite social media platforms. It just really helps to spread the word about the show, makes our fan community even bigger. And we just want to reach all Habs fans out there wherever they are. So anything that you can do to help with that, we appreciate it. So don't forget this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. What is your prediction for where the Canadiens will stand 20 games from now? We've already gotten through the first quarter of the season. What are they going to do in the second quarter of the season? We want to hear from you. Send us a text, 585-3-ROCKET. Drop your comments in the comment section on the YouTube channel. Hit us up on social media as well. But last week on episode 322, our Canadiens Connection question of the week, we started to talk about the fact that the trade season had kind of officially opened with some trades around the league taking place. And so we asked, which early season trade would you make to salvage the season for the Montreal Canadiens? And we know Elliot Friedman just told us that he doesn't think that the Canadiens are one big trade away from making a big difference. But that's fine. Elliot Friedman, that was Elliot Friedman's answer to our question. We wanted to know, which early season trade would you make to salvage the season for the Montreal Canadiens? And we had some really, really good responses again this week, Rick.
Well, I mentioned earlier with respect to this week's question that we welcome bold takes. I would categorize this as a bold take on YouTube that we received from @Habinations.
Oh, yes.
First, he or she says, great podcast. What would I do? Well, in my opinion, I would trade Caulfield and Hudson and Monty and Xhekaj.
Okay.
All
right.
For Lafreniere, Schneider, and Quick. So he's talking about a trade with the New York Rangers.
Okay. He
says, and he realizes this is a bit bold. He says, fans would freak out. Rangers would say bugger off. Canadians need a left-handed center to dish the puck to Demidov next season. I'd trade 2 of the 4 I've mentioned above to get one. Ooh. Go Habs, go. So there's a bold take.
A bold, yes.
For you from, we asked what early season trade would you make? Well, he puts in a blockbuster. Thank you, Habinations.
All right. Our friend She26 also chimed in, although it was a bit with a bit of dismay. She says, OMG, I watched the entire podcast as usual. She says watched because she watches the podcast on our YouTube channel. She says, I then go back and listen again to comment. In this particular podcast, I pretty much had an entire book of in-order comments.
I think everybody should listen to the Canadiens Connection twice.
That's right. Yeah,
I
like it. But then she goes on to say, I've been homesick from college with a 103-degree fever and disgusting antibiotics that make me feel worse. We're so sorry to hear that. We hope that you are feeling better now. That sounds awful. And she says, and when I went to post it, I accidentally deleted it. I don't even know what happened.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's so she says, so she basically lost all of those great comments, but says, thanks again for doing a great show. Marty St. Louis, Struble, Shea, meaning Shea Weber, Price, Fowler, Laval, the mailbag, goalies, Gorton Hughes trades, all of it. She apparently was a big
liked
fan.
all of it.
She liked all of it. So we hope you're feeling better. We look forward to hearing your comment this week, She26, and all the rest of you. Really, we do love to read everything that comes in from our listeners and viewers because everybody just really has such great perspectives and ideas and opinions. And sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. And that's okay. We just like to hear from you.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be plenty to talk about this coming week. As we said, the Canadiens will play their 20th game of the season on Saturday night when they host the Vegas Golden Knights. And then they play again on Tuesday at the Bell Center. Utah, the Utah Hockey Club coming in for their first game of the season. This will be the debut, the first game between these two franchises in NHL history. This is going to be a fun one to watch. And then immediately after that game, Montreal will
turn around and head to Columbus for a Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. puck drop game against the Blue Jackets. Why Wednesday night? Well, that's Thanksgiving Eve here in the U.S. In the U.S., Wednesday night is a very popular night to be out and about. It's a big social night, the night before Thanksgiving. And of course, it means there's not going to be hockey games on Thursday night necessarily. So it's going to be a fun one.
Happy Thanksgiving to our American friends.
Yes.
Yeah. To you too.
To me, well, I just,
to you personally, and to
all of our. Do you see how excited I am?
Yeah.
All of you American fellow Americans out there. Do you see how quickly I jumped in there to just say thank you on all of our behalves?
Yeah.
I'm so excited. But yes, I wish happy Thanksgiving to all the rest of our American listeners. And we will be back next Saturday, but let's put this out there. Watch for an earlier release of the podcast next Saturday, November 30th, because the Habs drop the puck against the New York Rangers at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon next week. So we're going to try to get the podcast out earlier in the day so that you can listen and then sit down to watch an afternoon Habs game.
Nice.
Which should be pretty fun. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the podcast. Join us over on YouTube if you can. And be sure to be back here again next Saturday for another very fun episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast. We thank you for being here. You have been listening to Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.